Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. It is Friday, October the 16th, the year of our Lord 2020. And joining me in studio today is the director of The Plot Against the President, a new must-see movie. Amanda Milius will join us in just a moment. But the breaking news in this hour coming out of France is that French policemen have shot a man dead after a stabbing attack in a Parisian suburb. I wanted to bring you the news of this because it is all too common nowadays that we see these types of attacks that appear to be Islamic terrorism related. The man is said to have shouted Allahu Akbar, which a lot of people think means God is great. It doesn't. It means Allah is greater than your God. And this happens so much across the continent of Europe nowadays, whether it's accounts at synagogues, people being harassed, attacked, or murdered, that it rarely ever gets reported on. So I wanted to make sure that we did our news duty by bringing you that story today. Absolutely awful attack that's been taking place over the course of this afternoon, early in the evening, Paris time. Doesn't bring me any pleasure to talk about these things, but it's worse if we don't. There's a whole lot of news to cover today, and of course the plot against the president is very high up. Somebody who had a plot against the president last night was Savannah Guthrie. Over the course of the entire hour-long town hall, although Savannah Guthrie did feel like she was debating the president at some points, the anchor actually intervened with the president's answers 61 times. 61 times she interrupted the President of the United States while he was up there. And I was watching last night. I wonder if you were at home too. Both of the town halls live in surround sound. Biden in my right ear, Trump in my left ear. And what was very clear to me at the time was that President Trump was attempting to answer the questions as quickly as possible, give a succinct answer, and move on. On the other channel, you had Joe Biden, who would take a question, look the person in the audience who asked the question in the eye, say their name about 18 times back to them, repeat the question back to them, so we're 3 minutes into the answer already here, and then spend another 6 or 7 minutes basically filibustering. And when you think about it, if you're Joe Biden, that's a pretty smart tactic. Because you know, if you're Joe Biden, or maybe you don't know anything if you're Joe Biden, but if you were Joe Biden, you might know that with every question that comes, you get one question closer to catastrophe. You get one question closer to Hunter Biden. And that was notable by its absence last night, wasn't it? No questions from George Stephanopoulos, no questions from the audience about the single largest news story that we've all been hearing about over the last 24, 36, 48 hours. And I can tell you, as somebody who knows a little bit about the inside scoop on this story, there is a whole lot more to come. So how long can the mainstream media go on giving Joe Biden an easy ride when even the big tech firms are riding to his rescue? You may not share the New York Post's articles. You may not share the images from inside the articles. You may not retweet somebody who's tweeted the articles. Shutting it down. And the mainstream media doing the same thing. Shutting it down. You may not talk about these things, but I can. And that's why networks like Real America's Voice matters. Because while these stories may not be covered on CNN or MSNBC or NBC or ABC or you name it, the list goes on and on, we will talk about those things here. We will talk about what's on Hunter Biden's hard drive. And we can also talk about how the hard drive came into the possession of Mayor Giuliani. Because you see, a lot of people, including Twitter themselves, the Silicon Valley psychopaths, say we can't publish this information because it's hacked. It's hacked information. Who's it hacked from? You know, after 90 days, possession of that laptop and the contents of its hard drive transferred into the possession of the Mac repair shop owner. That was in the contract, signed by Wes Hunter. So it then becomes his property, and if it's his property, he can do whatever he sees fit to do with it. Now, what he did was he gave it to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. And what did the FBI do with it? Your guess is as good as mine. They had it for months and months. We didn't hear a peep of it. We didn't hear anything about it. Could it be that the FBI has institutional bias, has institutional partisan bias? We'll ask Amanda Milius about that in just a moment as it pertains to her new movie, The Plot Against the President. But before we do that, let me just finish that previous thought. If you're the Mac store owner and you have Hunter Biden's laptop and you're looking through the hard drive, which is now yours to do with what you please, and you suspect that there is evidence of a crime on that laptop, maybe 3 crimes, maybe 4 crimes, maybe 15 crimes, isn't it your duty as a citizen, if the FBI isn't doing its job, to take it elsewhere? To try and make sure that somebody else does their job for them, maybe the FBI's job for them, maybe covers the news? After all, if Joe Biden wins the election, Hunter Biden would automatically become one of the most powerful men on the planet. He's already been shown to leverage his father's position in the past to make himself millions and millions of dollars and change US government policy. But the Mac store owner did the right thing. We'll be back with Amanda Milius in just a moment. Welcome back to the National Pulse. Well, sometimes I just go off on a rant, even when I don't have one scripted in front of me. So I apologise to our guest, Amanda, who rushed into studio only to sit down and have to listen to me for 8 minutes. But let's have some more of me while we're at it. I want to roll this clip from her new movie, The Plot Against the President. Let's run it.
But you can make a whole movie.
What I do remember is seeing on sites that I would actually check, I knew they were left-wing, but I would actually still check them, sites like the Huffington Post. I would see them taking what somebody had tweeted, an opinion that somebody had tweeted, and running that as a news story. whether it was CNN pushing it or whether it was Louise Mensch's crazy blog pushing it, that didn't stack up. The rules just didn't apply to them anymore. The more nefarious part of it is that a man can have lived his whole life in the public eye, and then he runs for office on a platform that the establishment doesn't like, and suddenly he is the worst human being in the world. They attempted to cancel Donald Trump because he was saying things that, as we now know, the country knows was true, and the country wanted something done about, whether it was the southern border, whether it was political correctness, whether it was draining this swamp that is Washington, D.C. But they decided that's wrong. Well, if that can happen to him, that can happen to anyone. You can live your life in the most pious, in the best, in the most moral, the most neighborly, in the most Christian way. And the establishment can decide, you're wrong now. You're wrong for us, you're wrong for your time, you're wrong for politics, you're wrong for everything. Then aren't we just seeing that taking place now? These microcosms, these micro cancellations of people all over the world, where they're being fired for saying something, whether they're being cast asunder for the rest of their lives. They won't be able to find a well-paying job perhaps because they didn't repeat a particular mantra or narrative. This idea that media is supposed to be neutral is a media idea that they have pushed on America. Media didn't start as neutral. Media hasn't been neutral all its life, apart from this one very small amount of time where they said, you're not allowed to read these things, we'll read them to you. That's exactly what they're still trying to do. Amanda, thank you for joining us here in studio, downtown Washington, D.C. We're pleased to have you back. You've been away working on this movie for so long. Let's start at the top. Who are you?
Besides your friend.
Besides my friend. I like to give people a little background of where you're coming at this from.
Well, I did film for, in one way or another, for 10 years. I went to USC Film School in Los Angeles. My parents worked in the film industry, and so I thought that was my trajectory. And then 2016 happened. You can't really be a conservative in the film industry in Los Angeles very easily, and I got really sick of it. I started volunteering for the Trump administration, for the Trump campaign. Ended up getting hired, found my way to Washington, D.C. I wasn't expecting that at all. Ended up getting hired at the State Department as a Trump political appointee. I was the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Content in the Bureau of Public Affairs, and I did that for 3 years, worked for the administration, saw a lot of things that were very surprising, and I had the opportunity to find myself. I found myself in this place where I had the opportunity to make a movie about the most important thing that happened during the last 4 years, and I felt like it was my responsibility, and I was in a unique position to do it. So I directed this movie, and based on Lee Smith's book of the same title.
Well, that's what I was about to ask you. So this is based off the book, The Plot Against the President by Lee Smith. Was that something that you came across and read and thought, wow, somebody really has to put this on the big screen? How did that work?
Yes, I saw it in manuscript form because Lee's was always part of my kind of extended friend group here, and a lot of the folks that the book and the movie is about are people I've known for the last 3 years. And the thing that was really important about Lee's book is that it focuses on people, on the story of the people who discovered this. It's not just, a dry retelling of this document and this being classified and that and da-da-da-da. It's not, it was the story of the people and the characters, and it's a perfect story for a movie. I mean, it's got the challenges and the different attitudes of the characters involved. I mean, it was ripe to be a movie, a way to tell people this story where it would be accessible.
I was really honoured that you would ask me to be in it, and we showed a little clip there. It was very hot in my dining room if you remember that day when we filmed in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to see it looked all right. I wasn't dripping and drenched with sweat in the final take there. Just before we go to a quick break here, just so people know a little bit more about your background, and then we'll get into more of what's in the movie. You have somewhat of a famous father in a movie-making sense, right?
Yes, he's both famous for the quality of the work that he's done. I mean, he's an amazing writer. He's one of the most prolific screenwriters through the 70s and 80s and 90s, really. And also for being a conservative in Hollywood. He's very outspoken Republican. He was on the board of the NRA. And so there was always this tension between his politics and his career that I was conscious of, for most of my life. He directed, Conan the Barbarian, Red Dawn. He wrote the script for Apocalypse Now and Dirty Harry and a bunch of other great movies that are very beloved by the right. So he's kind of...
And has he seen the movie?
He hasn't seen it yet because my mother's taking it over and actually showing him tonight, I think. So we'll see. We'll see if he approves.
Yeah, we'll be interested to see what the feedback is on that.
Yeah.
We've got about a minute left to break here. Who else is in this movie?
Jack Posobiec, Mike Cernovich, as far as social media and alternative new media people who got it right. I think it was really important to give them a voice and to have people like yourself. Devin Nunes, his team, Kash Patel is somebody who people are not, the public's not super familiar with, but he really steals the show, and he really was a big driving force behind discovering the Russiagate crimes. And Jack Langer, there was Congressman Nunes, of course, and Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Mike Turner, just a ton of people.
A star-studded affair, very clearly. We'll get back to the plot against the president with director Amanda Milius in just a moment. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the National Pulse here on this Friday afternoon. In just a few moments, we'll be talking with Kane, the editor of CitizenFreePress.com, who joins us every Friday, and of course we'll be discussing our new members on our site. You can go to thenationalpulse.com/support if you like our work. Join up as a member. We'll actually be hosting a town hall next week, as we do every month for our members, a private town hall. Natalie Winters and I think it's Tuesday at 6 p.m. So get in now, go to fundrealnews.com or thenationalpulse.com/support to get in on that chat. Meanwhile, we're here with Amanda Milius, director of the new movie, The Plot Against the President. You told me something in the break that I didn't know, Amanda. This is also in theaters.
Yes, we're adding theaters every day. It's playing in. We're not doing the usual film thing where you go to the coastal.
The festivals.
We're certainly. I mean, we'll see about that. But we're going to America first. We're in Ohio, Idaho, Wisconsin, Utah. The website patpmovie.com has constantly updated the theaters that it's available. It's definitely in about 7 cities this weekend, and every single week we'll be adding more. So if you want it in your city, tweet at us and demand it.
I've just found a little bit of a critique for Amanda here. The theaters button is really small at the bottom of the website. So if you go to patpmovie.com, scroll down to the bottom of the site, it says in theaters, you can find out. And we're looking at Hurricane, Utah, Rapid City, is that South Dakota, Siren, Wisconsin, Bristol, Virginia, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Hillsborough, Ohio at the moment. So you're adding more and more cinemas, or as you say, theaters, to that all the time. I want to get into the movie itself a little bit here. A lot of the times when these books come out, and of course, Lee Smith's book is fantastic, but people like myself, we only get to sort of dip into it. You know, we get sent the books by the publishers and say, hey, could you write about this or talk about it? Do you want to interview Lee, etc.? And our job is effectively within the course of a few hours to digest as much of this book as possible and then interview the subject about it. So I can't say I've read the whole book, but I've definitely dipped into the book. I want to understand what out of the book, what angle did you take? Because there's so much in there. How do you take that much content and go, okay, we're going to squeeze this into, 90 minutes less?
Yeah, 90 minutes. I mean, our first cut of the movie was 4 hours long. I mean, I have 70 hours of footage.
Can I watch that extended cut?
Actually, we're going to put that out.
Wow.
We're going to put it out in a series.
Okay.
So it'll be chapters. So if people want to dive more into the Flynn section or more into the media section or whatever, that they can kind of watch the expanded versions. So that'll be available soon. But as far as the book, well, the main thing is, when you're doing a documentary, you're interviewing people, you don't know exactly what they're going to say. You can't have people completely mimic what's happening in the book. But so what we did is we took the general structure of going through the eyes of Kash Patel, Devin Nunes, and Jack Langer as the anchors really to the story, and from there you develop, you go farther out based on what they explain to us and what they say. I mean, a lot of it also was Sidney Powell, being Michael Flynn's attorney, walking us through everything that's happened with him and the really just the absurdity of that whole situation. I think actually,
which is ongoing,
right? Which is still happening. I mean, it's insane. Yeah. But the Flynn as kind of the through line through the whole thing, I think was really important because he is really the biggest victim of this, besides the American people, and I think it was and the truth and our institutions and our whole republic. So I mean, the book really set up, like I said, that angle to go through the eyes of these people, as opposed to here's the Russiagate, the movie.
Right.
I mean,
did you learn much during this process?
Yes, there's things that I learned that some of which show up in the movie and some of which we couldn't, that I didn't even know, and I feel like I'm pretty well versed in this issue. I mean, there was things that I learned that were really shocking, and I think, for example, one that I guess we can talk about is the way that the FISA court allows for the 3-jump rule or the 2-jump rule, depending on how you want to look at it. And that is well explained in the film, but the fact that I don't think most Americans understand that they were able to surveil the entire campaign via 1 or 2 or 3 entry points. I don't think most people understand that.
Do most people understand that also nothing's changed?
Right, which is crazy that people are kind of, that's another reason that I made it, is because we're all kind of so sick of the topic that we've just gone back to sleep and are like, oh, well, the media just did this mass brainwashing on the entire country for 4 years and no one's doing anything about it.
Right.
And we're all sort of like, well, it's true, that turned out to be fake. Let's move on because this is exhausting and now we're being, brainwashed in some other way. It's either, Ukraine or impeachment or Corona or this or that, whatever it is. Like, it's always something. And so people just move on to the next thing. And
well, it's gaslighting, isn't it? I mean, that's all they know how to do now is constant gaslighting. You saw it last night in the town halls. I mean, I think it came out earlier today that some of the people asking Joe Biden the questions at his town hall were Democrat operatives. A former Obama speechwriter. It's gaslighting. And we'll probably do an entire show on gaslighting as a concept at some point.
Yeah, you summed it up really well in the film, too.
Thank you.
About, you're right, this man is in it. He's excellent. But when you talked about how they basically were trying to lie to the public as far as information being concealed, and you can't look at this information, you can only understand it through us, that's what's happening today. That's what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
It's going to be their agenda until we push back and say no. And people have to do that. I'm not entirely sure how, but Rick Grinnell speaks about that in the film, where he says we need to call these journalists to account. They wouldn't have been able to pull this off without the media. The media angle is so important.
So, Amanda, I wanted to hang around for one more segment if you can. We're going to be joined by Kane. He's the founder of CitizenFreePress.com, my favorite news aggregator, and I want to see if he's got any questions for you on the same topic. But just before we go to break, I have to ask you this, because the media will be all over me if I don't. How much Russian money did you take to make this movie?
I was waiting for somebody. I know somebody's going to ask me that. I used to make jokes.
Might as well get it out now. What was it? 500 million?
I know, right? I wish.
Billion?
Then the movie'd be free.
Is that where this tweed jacket came from?
Right. No, my dad's vintage jacket that I had done so I could wear tweed for you.
I'm just glad I didn't wear my tweed because it is tweed weather now.
That's what I was thinking.
And we would have
looked ridiculous.
Matched way too. I mean, with the red tie and the red background. And
we would have
looked
like we were doing a Christmas special.
Maybe we should do a Christmas special. Amanda Milius, director of Plot Against the President. In the break, do me one favor, patpmovie.com. Leave your email address, go and download the movie. You can watch it on Vimeo, maybe watch it tonight.
Vimeo on demand.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I love the comments in the live chat on YouTube as I'm watching them. Everyone's saying, yes, do a Christmas special. So I guess we're tied now to a Christmas special. You'll have to come back and we'll do a Plot Against the President Christmas special. Bringing in now the founder of CitizenFreePress.com. By now you all know it's my favorite website other than the National Pulse, and PATPmovie.com. CitizenFreePress.com is one of the groundbreaking aggregation sites that serves you the real news. Unfortunately, Matt Drudge decided he didn't want to do that anymore. But hey, more for us, hey Kane? More for us. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy Friday. Let's get this thing going. We have, 18 days to destroy Joe Biden. And you've got a good partner right next to you who's going to try to help us. You know, I mentioned during the break, I didn't know anything about her or the film, but promoted it, put up the trailer probably a week or so ago. And having spent 4 or 5 years in Santa Monica, tell me a quick story. You mentioned your parents were on the conservative side. Tell me a quick story about dealing with Hollywood anti-Republican bias.
I'd say off the bat, it's in a macro way. I mean, the fact that my dad is even considered controversial. I mean, any article you see about him or anything, he was the most professional, one of the most prolific writers, and every single article has some way of calling him controversial, which is silly because most of the country is also conservative. It's not that controversial, and they did the same thing to this film. I mean, one of if you want to hear a micro version of it, is even little things. It always pops up in even small ways. I mean, number one, the fact that Showtime puts millions and millions of dollars behind this ridiculous Comey television two-night event that was just absolutely unbearable to watch. It was just awful.
Disgusting.
And then this, of course, we're putting out, ourselves. It's privately funded. We've got, Vimeo on demand. We're arguing with other platforms. It's all, in some ways limited. But I mean, even something down to getting insured, which is something you have to do for every film. Half of the insuring companies were like, oh, well, it's so controversial. I don't know. We have to look into it more carefully because, it's the most perfectly sourced. It's all the people that were actually there, first-person sources, multiple sources for every single claim on camera, and I don't see anything controversial about that. I actually think if liberals or whoever, people on the fence, skeptics, watch it, they'd have a very hard time saying that we don't back up every single claim that we make. It's all out there. It's in transcripts. It's in declassified documents. And, it's not hyperbole. We worked very hard to not make, a lot of times conservative films can get so angry at the situation that they can get a little bit, you know what I mean? They can go a little bit over the top, but we feel like this is a historical... Have you watched
the Stephen K. Bannon film?
Right. It's meant to be a historical document that really sets the record straight, and I think it's... avoids hyperbole at most points.
Yeah. Kane?
Of course, conservatives are always fringe. We're always controversial. We're always far right. If you pay attention to adjectives when you read articles, that's, you see that and it never ends and it's frustrating. And the same principles are not applied to the left. There's my reaction there. Right. I screamed out yes when she talked about the Comey Showtime scene. I posted a couple of clips from that. It was ridiculous. One of them, just so much pathos, so much emotion, so much care inside the FBI for Comey, which we know wasn't true. So that was the reason for my outburst there. But yeah, it looks like
ridiculous.
And let's hope that it gets some good press and that a couple of million conservatives see it.
It's been getting an amazing response. I mean, it's overwhelming. Basically, we can't even keep up with the demand. That's one of the reasons we're really pushing on these platforms that are supposed to have it out at this moment, but are conveniently holding back a couple more days.
Well, I mean, we don't have to talk about who that is or anything, but
we are.
That's a problem that we often come up against as conservative
the demand is there.
Creatives. Is the demand is there.
Mm-hmm.
but you get put into like extended review processes.
Exactly.
And this is kind of like what we're seeing with the New York Post stuff right now, right? It went, by the way, it went into an extended review, i.e. they locked everything down, and then last night, they came out and said, okay, well, look, we're going to allow people to look at it, but it's going to come up with a disclaimer. Are you worried, Amanda, that your movie is going to have a big disclaimer on it when they put these things up on the mainstream platforms?
I mean, frankly, I don't even care if they do. They did put a disclaimer up because it's so everything we're saying is so obvious and it's so convincing that I'm not worried about it. But I mean, it would be nice if they could just abide by their own contracts and do what they say. But apparently, we're all exempt from basic law that way. But,
meanwhile, Cuties is just fine.
That's fine, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's really ridiculous. But yeah, we're meeting the demand. We've got Vimeo on demand as an outlet. We've got actually two, I would say, free speech friendly platforms that are subscription platforms. You can watch it on either of those, special.io or My Movies Plus, which they're both linked on our website. And I would recommend everybody follow us on Twitter because we can get really snarky.
Oh, good.
And we'd like to get
is that you or your team or everyone? Go on, tell us.
It's kind of a mixture.
It's other people.
It's actually you. You're running it.
That's right. In fact, I run all of it. I run the Citizen Free Press account. I run Amanda's Twitter account. I run all of it. Kane, just before we let Amanda go, any further questions, comments?
No, just kick butt, take names, and I think Dinesh D'Souza's success, amazing success with 2 or 3 documentaries, proves there's an audience, and I hope you have the same kind of commercial success. Best of luck.
Yes, thank you. I know we know there's an audience. I mean, it's actually one last quick thing. When the trailer came out, it actually crashed the Hollywood Reporter's site, which was the first place that debuted the trailer, which just tells you how many people are looking for this kind of content that aren't being served by Hollywood traditionally.
Well, you know how unavailable I like to make myself. And when you told me you were doing the movie, despite how ornery I am, I still made time. In fact, it was a lot of time.
It was a lot of time.
It was about 3 hours that you guys were in my dining room.
And we're going to release the individual interviews shortly, as well as extended features on the DVD and Blu-ray and on our subscription channels.
And where can people get the DVD and Blu-ray?
They will be posted on our site as soon as they're available for pre-order, and supposedly Amazon if they can get their...
So it's PATP, Plot Against the President, PATPmovie.com. If they subscribe in the top right corner, will they get an alert when the DVD's out?
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay,
and discounts and everything else, and our beautiful merch, our beautiful posters. So
you didn't bring me any merch.
I haven't unpacked it yet. I just got back from the studio. We literally finished the movie like 7 days ago.
There's always an excuse. All right, Amanda Milius, Plot Against the President movie, PATPmovie.com. Thank you so much for joining us here on the National Pulse. We'll be right back with more Kane. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I was going to say .com. This isn't a website. This is a show. Welcome back to the National Pulse. And the website is thenationalpulse.com. You can tell it's a Friday and that I've been slightly under the weather this week. I'm a little slow off the mark at the moment, but it is the weekend. But there's no weekend for one man, and that man is Kane, founder of CitizenFreePress.com, who joins us on the line now. Kane, you actually don't get any days off, and with 17 days and a wake-up to go until Election Day, are you going to lay on a beach in the Bahamas or something after this is all done?
When longer term, yes. When I have help with the site and that's taken care of, I will. But until then, no. Because as I've explained to you in the past, all your work dies if you don't update the site for 10 to 12 hours. So no, I'll be continuing to run it. But since time is probably going to be short, I wanted to break a little bit of news. At least I haven't seen it anywhere else, and I've been waiting to do the story. It's some polling data from Trafalgar. What people may not know about Trafalgar, and I'm reading this off their website right now. They were named the best polling firm of the 2016 presidential race. And this year, Real Clear Politics called them, quote, the most accurate pollster of the cycle among firms that polled multiple Senate and governor's races. So they have a very, very good background. And they're one of the reasons I thought Trump was going to win in 2016. So check out some of the data. I haven't tweeted about this. No one has written about this. And it's all on, if people want to go to the trafalgargroup.org. Go to their website. So brand new, Michigan, 2020 presidential poll. Trump, 46.5. Joe Biden, 45.9. The Libertarian, Joe Jorgensen, actually is pulling 2.5%. But so there we have it. Michigan, Trump leading by almost 1%. Florida poll from yesterday. Trump, 48.4. Biden, 46.1. So he's up 2.3% in Florida. They have a Louisiana poll. We already know who's going to win that. Pennsylvania, this came up on Monday. Biden is leading 47.4, Trump 45.1. So it's within the margin of error. I'll add what else? Oh, Arizona was the other interesting one here. And I'll read those numbers quickly. This came out last Friday. Whoops, that's the Senate poll. Mark Kelly leading McSally by 1.9. But they do have a presidential poll. And here it is. Trump, 47.8. Joe Biden, 43.8. So to quickly summarize, that is state polls from Arizona, Michigan, Florida, and Pennsylvania. 3 of those 4 show Trump leading by between 2 to 4 points. So I just want to get that out there because everyone all week long has had ridiculous polling. We've all had it. It's been slammed down our throats. And so there's some good news.
Kane, I'm going to break your heart here.
All right, I'm listening. You wrote about it.
I did it on the War Room this morning.
You're kidding. I had this say. I did. You found it on Twitter, I assume.
No, I was looking at the Trafalgar numbers on the Real Clear Politics latest presidential general election poll aggregate. And then I went through a lot of the older ones, and I think you mentioned one more than I did. I can't remember. I think it was Arizona I didn't mention. But look, let's get to the matter, though. You're absolutely right, and you're absolutely right to mention this, because these are not insignificant shifts. Here's the thing, even if you believe, if you're the ordinary punter out there and you believe all this hoo-ha about the president being down by double digits nationally, you've got to look at the shift. And the shift, the momentum is clearly back with the Trump campaign here. That's why, and this is how we got into the subject this morning on the show, the Axios story that came out this morning, which claims to have 3 anonymous sources within the Trump campaign saying that, oh, he's on the losing side of all of this, and they're like rats trying to get off sinking ship now. That's right. Why I knew that was total BS from the get-go, because they'll be looking at these numbers a day or two before we get to look at these numbers, and so they'll know that since the president's recovery from the CCP virus, that they're actually moving back into with the momentum, Kate.
Yeah, and I think we'll see how much of it is a shift, and how permanent that is. We've got, as you said, 17 days to go. I didn't watch your whole show this morning, so I didn't realize you covered it. But it's really, really interesting and important. And I think people need to understand how good of a track record Trafalgar has. Yeah, I saw your answer. Hey, look, I got to do work, and so I can't always listen. But people need to understand how good of a track record Trafalgar has. And these are the polls that matters. You know, right after the Zogby, who Paul Bedard has a direct line to in his Washington Examiner columns, Zogby came out and said it's not 16 points, it's not 15 points, it's 2 points. He put out a report, essentially saying that. And he followed your logic. He talked about, you know, not all publishers. YouGov does publish their internal tabs, but most publishers don't. So you don't really know what kind of a cross section people are, you know, pollsters are looking at. And that was the point he was making, that this kind of polling is being done in order to delegitimize and knock the wind, knock the spirit out of Trump voters and have them not show up. And that was Zogby's read, and I think that's probably correct. And so it's important that we know that, as you said, the national numbers actually don't mean anything. It only matters in the swing states. There's no way it's a 14-point race. It's going to be 2 or 3 points either way, just like Trump-Clinton was in 2016. Yep. I'm talking about the popular vote. And the state internal, you know, the swing states, they're going to be all the same states that are going to matter. But we'll add a few more. New Hampshire, we only lost by 5,000 or 6,000 votes, and Minnesota was only 0.5%. Both those are in play. In all the other swing states, I put up a story on this earlier in the week. Look, Trump was trailing in the polling in Ohio. He won Ohio by 9. He was trailing by 4 points in the polling. He was trailing in North Carolina by 5 or 6 points. He won by 3. I don't remember the final polls for Florida in 2016, but I know he was behind and he won by a point. So we're just trying to get the word out. Be calm. Things still look good. Nothing has changed. It's all just a media narrative to destroy the Trump will. Or the will of the Trump vote.
I think you're absolutely right, Kane. We've got to go to a quick break now. I think you're absolutely right. I'll say this as well, having been on campaigns, they're not just trying to demoralize the voters, they're trying to demoralize the campaign staff. It's psychological warfare that they're fighting right here, and I'll tickle you a little bit here. You'll enjoy this. You weren't the only one that didn't hear me talking about this, even though it was an extended rant this morning. I got a text from Jack Maxey about an hour ago saying, wow, have you seen the new Michigan Trafalgar poll? I said, yeah, I only screamed it in your face this morning for 5 minutes, Jack. We'll be right back with more from Kane and citizenfreepress.com. As ever, I want to say a great big thank you to the people who like the investigative work and the buried leads that we pull out at thenationalpulse.com. And if you want to support our work, you can go to thenationalpulse.com/support, or you can go to fundrealnews.com. It will fall to you guys to do such things. It's definitely not going to be done by the big corporates. It's not going to be done by Conservative Inc. and all of the establishment rhinos here in Washington, D.C. So I want to read, as we often do, some of the names out of the people who have joined us in our membership program. It's called The Nationalists. So I want to say a big thank you. If we could put this on screen here. In no order, I've got it in a different order on my screen, but Donald B. and Carnal J. and Pamela M. and Kristen C. and Victoria P. and James C. and Sebastian F. and Alan M. and Alan S. and Tony Q. and Deborah D. And the list, as you see, goes on and on. It's $10 to support Real News. And you get a nifty little hat and a signed copy of my book and a bumper sticker, a laptop sticker, and a personal signed letter from me. And yes, my wrist hurts because I have personally been signing all of these books and all of these letters myself, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them. Anyway, big thank you to everyone out there for supporting our work. I want to bring Kane back in here. Kane, it's nearly the anniversary of the Battle of Trafalgar, I'm told, and obviously we're talking about the Battle of Trafalgar in a sense, the Trafalgar polling that we're seeing that's showing this president actually doing far better than a lot of what the mainstream media is telling us. But it's no reason to be complacent. Why? Because, of course, the Democrats still have the big cheat up their sleeve in the form of these mass mail-in ballots. And I want to bring the attention to this story that I know you were so kind to link to on citizenfreepress.com. It came from the Associated Press, but again, it was our buried lead that I pulled out from this Associated Press story that I think was more interesting than the AP story as a whole. Now remember, Savannah Guthrie says to the president last night, hey, there's no evidence of mass mail-in ballot fraud in the United States. And if I were the president, I would have replied, yeah, because we've never had mass mail-in ballots. But look at the countries that have. So Dr. Stuart Wilkes-Heague of the University of Liverpool in the United Kingdom wrote once, greater use of postal voting has made UK elections far more vulnerable to fraud and resulted in several instances of large-scale fraud. And then you look at what the AP has said this morning in their article. They say mail-in voting has featured high-profile errors. 100,000 faulty ballots sent out. 100,000 faulty ballots sent out in New York, 50,000 in Columbus, Ohio, and a vendor supplying that state and Pennsylvania blaming delays on sending ballots on overwhelming demand. Kane, it's clear that this is some form of cheat. We know that because of what the Transition Integrity Project leaked out in August, and we were the first to that story to say, hey, they're going to count up the votes that they need to get it over the line for Joe Biden, and then they're going to add those votes on after November the 3rd. Well, we found this stack here. Some of these weren't counted. Oh, we'll double count these other ones. Am I wrong, Kane?
No, you're not wrong. And I think it's important to sound the alarm as loudly and urgently as possible. Look, this is unknown territory. And that's why I think the legal efforts that are being ramped up here ahead of time are extremely important. And hopefully they're following this stuff as closely as those of us in the media are. And I'm sure that they are. But it's frightening. Look, that's one of the things that scares me before I go to sleep every night. I don't want to think about how they can essentially manufacture the ballots from blanks. There was a guard watching a drop-off ballot box in Baltimore who was shot last night, 4:35 in the morning. Apparently, the ballot box wasn't tampered with. But look, the mafia is going to want to get involved in this. Everyone's going to be. There are probably millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars that will pay for ballots, pay for blanks. I almost don't like talking about it because there's so many unknowns. You're right to point out that we should look at other nations where they have experience with this and what's occurred there, and only assume that whatever's happened there will be magnified here because there's more money, more at stake. So
I agree.
That's why turnout matters. Go ahead.
Okay, got about 2.5 minutes left, and I realise I've dominated a lot of the time. I wanted to find out what was on your radar, what you thought of the town halls last night, what else is coming up, what are you looking at citizenfreepress.com?
Well, the town halls last night, I placed both of the videos inside one story. So I had NBC News on the top and ABC News right below it, so people could switch back and forth, which is what I was doing. And it was an abomination. Savannah Guthrie, she was doing the bidding of everyone who was calling for an NBC boycott, and she wanted to show that she was tough. And Stephanopoulos didn't do anything to push back on Biden. And as you pointed out probably 10 or 15 minutes ago, now it's leaking out that an Obama speechwriter was one of the people who asked questions, as well as the wife of a Democratic rep from Pennsylvania. So the town halls are what they are.
Who do you think going on today? I mean, if you're the average vote or one of these voters that needs to be won over, one of these very small 1% or 2% of people in the swing states and the swing counties in the swing states, who did last night go to in your mind?
Well, you have to assume not everyone watched both, but if they saw Biden, he looked good and he went for an extra half hour. But why did he look good? Because Stephanopoulos made him look good. And then Trump, it looked like a little bit of a repeat of the Chris Wallace thing, because Savannah Guthrie, she did the interrupting instead of Biden and Chris Wallace. So no, I don't think the optics were good for our candidate last night.
I just think that Biden probably lost a lot of support with moderates, independents, and especially women last night when he started talking about 8-year-olds having transgender surgeries. And not least because people are going to find out when they Google this. We covered at the National Pulse an exclusive a couple of weeks ago that the Biden Foundation actually supported transgenderism for 18-month-old babies.
I know.
So I think extraordinary stuff. All right, Kane, I'm sorry we're at the end of this show already.
Great show. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, brother. And thank you for being with us. Make sure, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to citizenfreepress.com. We've got to get Kane an extended hour next week, I think. People are so intrigued as to what this upcoming media mogul thinks and has to say and how the site works. In the meantime, make sure you're going to thenationalpulse.com. fundrealnews.com. Want to wish you all a very happy weekend. Of course, the anniversary of the Battle of Trafalgar is on Monday. We'll see you then at 3 p.m. here on the National Pulse, Real America's Voice.